Household debt is a financial concept that is unnecessarily used throughout one's society. However, it's one of the largest and most reliable sources for predicting one's economy. Household debt is a concept defined to encapsulate the entire debt of all the people living in one household. The types of debt each individual dives into can be done through consumer loans, mortgage loans, vehicle loans, credit card loans, and so on. The role of household debt in one nation is that it has been one of the causes of major financial fallacies. It has dragged down growth and caused havoc and headaches for a country's government. Amongst the most recent and cited fallacy that this financial concept has caused is towards the subsequent US and European crisis from 2007 to 2012. This is because when there's too much household debt, it would simply become a large burden on society. And when an individual fails to pay down their debt, it then transfers that problem towards the financial industry, which from here on out becomes a domino effect. What would have been further economic trouble is when the entire country faces a systemic risk, and on top of it a huge household debt, raising the concepts of falling income whilst household debt increases. In recent years, however, we have seen this happen. The economic drawdown brought by the COVID-19 pandemic has made household debt skyrocket. It has gone up significantly in developed nations, and even developing ones. In Southeast Asia, the riskiest nations that are plausible for this systemic risk are Thailand and Malaysia, two countries that have roughly around 89% of household debt to GDP, meaning their household debt is almost as large as its annual economic output. Singapore, on the other hand, is estimated to be close to 70%, which is still a considerable number. Indonesia and the Philippines have only 17 and 10% respectively. With such large household debt compared to their annual economic output, does this, however, suggest that a potential crisis may happen within these three major borrowing countries? Or is there something that this ratio is missing out on? Well, for this video, we will take a close look at Singapore's case. This is because, unlike Malaysia and Thailand, Singapore is regarded as the world's financial hub. Hence, the threat of a household crisis is not only going to cause major headaches for the country's domestic economy, but will affect the entire world. To understand everything deeply, and how household debt may or may not cause an economic risk, let us first discuss what Singapore's household debt is composed of. According to the latest publicly available data from the Department of Statistics Singapore, the country has the total household sector liabilities of about $363 billion. Quite a massive amount, and do take note that while these liabilities do present themselves as a considerable figure, where the risk truly lies is if Singaporeans can pay down the debt repayments properly. These $363 billion household liabilities are then divided into two major categories. First is mortgage loans, and the second is personal loans. The mortgage loan is the largest destination for borrowings, accounting for $260 billion worth. These are then sourced from financial institutions such as banks, and they can be from the Government-Led Housing and Development Board, or HDB for short. One of the key aspects that we would like to insert immediately in this video is that Singapore's mortgage loan should have been way higher. The country's real estate price is one of the most expensive in the entire world. Living there and buying a place to live in should have made their mortgage loans twice or even thrice higher than the $260 billion that its citizens have accumulated thus far. However, the reason why the society does not seem to have an enormous mortgage loan figure, which even after being a destination for highly priced real estate in a luxury market, is because the government intervened. The housing sector of Singapore is one of the most efficient in the entire world. As most Singaporeans know, the country has enabled its citizens to have a cheaper form of housing, which is done through the HDB, which subsidizes the entire housing sector. According to data from Value Champion, the average price of subsidized HDB housing is around $500,000, whereas private and unsubsidized property costs an average of $1.7 million. In simpler terms, the government is helping the country by providing cheap real estate, and had there been no government intervention in ensuring Singaporeans have a proper housing market, their mortgage loans would obviously be way higher than where it is right now. The second category on the list is personal loans. These account for the remaining $103 billion. And just like how the concept of HDB differs from most government policies around the world, so do Singapore's personal loans. Motor vehicle loans are quite frankly very small, estimated to be only $10 billion. This requires exactly no explanation, since Singapore has a very tight vehicle law, and for an island nation with little land, it would not really make any sense to buy a vehicle, other than using it for luxury purposes. Much of personal loans come from a myriad of factors, but it also comes from investment purposes. Some Singaporeans have chosen to go into debt to fund their investment ideas. Therefore, the idea of household debt both from mortgage and personal loans differs widely from the rest of the world, especially when we compare the likes of Malaysia and Thailand, which are both regarded to be users of personal loans to fund their vehicles and mortgage loans to buy a house. Finally, the most important question of today's video is there any possible economic risk to Singapore's entire household debt sector? Well, from what we've outlined so far, there seems to be a very small chance for that to happen. Here's why. Even after having a household debt to GDP of 70%, the truth of the matter is Singapore's household wealth, the counterpart of its debt, is massive. The total household net worth of Singapore is estimated to be $2.4 trillion, a figure that is absurdly more than its household debt. If a country's household wealth is this much, compared to its debt, then it is easy to say that there is almost zero systemic risk involved. This is a clear case showing just how rich Singapore really is, and it might as well be a huge shock, since the country's GDP is only estimated to be 533 billion Singaporean dollars, making its net worth to be almost 5 times more than its annual economic output. Now, after knowing that Singaporeans are worth trillions, everyone would probably want to understand how this figure adds up. Let us then take a look at what the country's total net worth consists of. However, before we do that, we should also take note that while the country's total wealth is extraordinarily massive, there's also a line of inequality between the ultra-rich and the average Singaporean. Therefore, we cannot say that every Singaporean is of course going to be in the line of very wealthy people. Nevertheless, it still showcases how robust the country's financial system is. Anyway, going back to our topic, household net worth is composed of many factors. The first is the household's assets. An asset is a term and tells us how much the household owns, unlike liabilities, which show how much a household owes. These assets are divided further into banking deposits, shares and securities, life insurance, and the Central Provident Fund. For simplistic sake, we will just take a look at the largest ones. The first is the country's currency and deposits. This category is approximately $566 billion. As the name suggests, it is the citizens' money deposited in a financial institution. The second largest is from the Central Provident Fund. This fund, if you're not keenly aware, is Singapore's compulsory comprehensive savings and pension plan. According to the laws of Singapore, this money cannot be withdrawn until certain conditions are met. This could be one of the reasons why the overall wealth of Singaporeans is high, as their savings and pension plans are locked, and over the years of accumulation it would of course go up. Now these financial assets, as what we can call them, are composed of liquid assets, which is another term that defines an asset that can be quickly converted into cash. These financial assets are roughly $1.6 trillion. The other remaining factor comes from the residential property asset. Just like having a mortgage loan, one is also entitled to, of course, have assets from their own residence. These are the remaining $1.2 trillion. Anyway, to sum it all up, indeed there should be no systemic risk that is foreseeable anytime in the near future. In fact, we may not ever see a household debt-led crisis within Singapore. While we could not find any publicly available data on how much the average annual debt repayments Singapore's citizens have, the number of assets compared to the total liabilities is far too much to even see whether there really is a debt repayment risk circling around its citizens. So knowing all these, why is Singapore's entire housing sector so robust? Well, many can argue that it is because of the country's economy. Indeed, the country has gone from nothing to becoming a financial hub that influences its citizens to become high-income earners. However, one of the particular aspects that have downplayed this entire household sector is due to the country's restrictions. Laws, by that matter. There are policies implemented in Singapore prescribed by the government, and according to the Monetary Authority of Singapore, the mortgage servicing ratio is capped at 30% of a borrower's gross monthly income. Furthermore, the total debt servicing ratio, which includes all debt repayment obligations, should be no more than 55% of the individual's gross monthly income. This, in simpler terms, suggests that the laws are of course limiting household borrowing in Singapore. Whether this is a good or a bad policy, however, is also a debatable topic. While many arguments support strong household spending, many fallacies disregard the use of too much household debt. But do let us know if you think the government's policy surrounding the use of debt is good or bad. Thanks for watching.